Hello and welcome back to Children of Misery. Today we're going to be drawing some Titans, which are the origins of magic in this world. So this is kind of a part two of our magic system one. I actually have that document open as well so I can reference it. But we kind of talked about the different kinds of magic and what they look like. We kind of associated a color with them too, which is really nice for this one, because that means I can apply that to our Titan designs. But I'm kind of thinking of going for just kind of a straight on drawing of each Titan, just to make things simple, and then maybe later on we can refine those designs. But I just want to get some ideas out there and kind of get the vibe. Here's our document. Let's get a layer. And I'm going to get the symmetry tool going. I think that'll be nice. So to kind of review, this is our previous document, kind of documenting magic. But we had the different uh, types of magic and the different months of the year. Because there's 8 months in the year, there's 8 types of magic, there's 8 Titans. It looks like we didn't fully decide on Nulos, so maybe we can do that today. But we've got Droma, which is kind of the most important one for Misery, because that's the Titan that Misery's built on, but that kind of deals with ideas, beginnings, dreams, or enchantment. So basically intent. It's used for enchanting magical objects as well, which is kind of the main export of Misery. Then we've got Nelios. This is creation, or making something from nothing. Uh, kind of conjuration, if you will. So, creating objects out of thin air. Well, not out of thin air. It comes from somewhere. There's a cost and material, but it just doesn't necessarily have to be direct. We've got Aurak, which is like oracular, seeing the future, information, fortune telling, that sort of thing. We got Validus, which is kind of power and energy, so kind of just pure force. Alvar, which is more protection and defense. Illus, which is illusion, so this is like a change in look. It doesn't actually change the way things are, but because that is Nulos, that is the changing and converting of form. I guess that would be your alchemy. So transforming one thing into another thing, which is different from getting something from, quote, nothing. There is a something, but we can work out the details of that later. I also don't want this to be like a hard magic system where like everything has to have an explanation. And then finally there's Mortis, which is death or life force. So this is necromancy would fall into here. We talked a little bit about how investigators and like forensic scientists kind of fall under this category. Very, very useful. And then the way different common magics work is sort of a combination of these. So we've got healing magic is sort of a combination of life force and power and energy. You're essentially using the person's own energy to heal themselves and your energy to supplement whatever they're lacking. So you end up with kind of orange and white, so you get sort of a yellowish gold color for healing. So that's how magic works. It's a simple energy system, so the more energy you have, you can output that. If you just dump it all at once, it might have a big splash, but probably not. You're probably not going to be able to sustain that for very long. Versus kind of like a water spout here, where it's a very controlled flow. Everyone has the potential for magic, but not everyone is skilled in magic, so it takes refinement. I think a lot of people know simple cantrips. Light a candle, small gust of breeze to get the air flowing, stuff like that. I think would be very common for people to use just without thinking, but anything more complex, like if you wanted to go into healing magic, I think you would have to learn that from somebody. But there is street magic, which is people just sort of figuring it out, not uh, through an education institute, but just out of necessity. So that creates an interesting culture in the city. So that'll be our reference for the Titans today. We're going to start with Droma just because that one's the most important and the one that the City of Misery is built on. And Droma's interesting because I went with a very human skull for the kind of landmark of the city. There we go. I guess we should have some sort of like reference of some kind of guy. Let me draw just a real quick human. Something like that. Just to get a reference in there. Something really basic. His legs seem too short to me. Also need a different eraser. Here we go. I think I had a natural edge eraser somewhere. There we go. That'll work fine. Yeah, that's much, much better. Go back to our pencil. There we go. So there's a person for reference, just to get things started so we can have some scale. They're gonna be very, very, very tiny. Here's our human layer. In fact, I'm gonna copy. No, I'm gonna duplicate this a couple times just to make it a little bit darker so you can see it down there. Okay, now we have our little reference. Let's make, got that Droma layer. Let's make a Titan. So this one's going to be definitely the most human looking. I want each one to be different. I guess I should make a new layer just for notes. Turn off the symmetry for a minute. So I want each Titan to be very different. That looks terrible. There we go. Like, I want them to be different enough where they don't even really look like the same species as each other, because each one sort of embodies a different type of magic. But they should be associated with their color, I think. Because that would be nice visually, I think. Make them distinguishable. So that'll be good. Let's get back to Droma. What do we want out of this? What in the world? There we go. That's better. Turn my flow down just a smidge. Yeah, that'll work. Okay. Yeah, I want them to be... I definitely want them to be more humanoid. So we're probably going to use the same proportions. Oh, the other note I should add, I don't feel like turning off the symmetry tool. The Titans don't really have gender. They're not going to have any, they're not going to have any clothes, but they're not going to be naked. If that makes sense. Especially because the series centers around kids. We don't want any nude Titans here. So we'll get a basic form in there. Sort of almost like the Da Vinci anatomy drawing. Hello, welcome to the stream. We're just getting started with our first Titan. This is Droma. The Dream Titan. But I'm just going to get a basic form in, and then we can tweak it and figure out where we're going from there. I think I do want them to be kind of bigger and longer. The other thing, too, is we do have giant folk in Misery, so the proportions of them should probably mirror what you see in Titans. And they typically tend to be a bit longer in limb. So maybe we'll shorten this torso just a smidge. That would be nice. And I can already tell that this is going to be a little too big, so we're going to shrink it up. Get these legs right. We're sort of just going to make a paper doll and see where it goes from there. But yeah, I want each Titan to be very, very different. I imagine some of them are probably going to have a four-legged design. Because I want them to basically not look related to each other at all. Because they're just different manifestations of magic. That has a weird curve to it. I don't like it. There we go. Okay, we've got a building block. Let's go in and actually add things to this and sort of get a direction from there. So this does have to have, because of the way I designed the skull in the city, this does have to have kind of human-ish features to it. So I'll just kind of lightly draw our skull in here. Just to get it started and kind of figure out where we want to go from there. I feel like Droma should be kind of wispy almost. Not really sure how to explain it besides that, but I think I want a thinner, longer neck. So let's move this head up a little bit, just to make it look a little more alien. And the Titans don't really have a gender, but I imagine Droma looking more feminine than masculine. Because I started this campaign with my players, and I have, like, I haven't done a video on the Church of Misery yet. but it's called the Church of the Dreamer because they sort of worship the Dream Titan and like dream magic. It centers around like dream interpretation. So like the hymns are lullabies. The scripture is very philosophical and poetic. But I imagine that Jeroma would be referred to as a she just for convenience of having something. I don't feel like it would be appropriate to call it an it. It's like I feel like Jeroma should look pleasant but also quite frightening. I think is kind of what I'm going for here. Like weirdly human but not quite. But we can play around with it. We'll see where it goes. Let's get some eyes in there. I wonder if it should have like this like kind of ridge to it. I kind of like the flow that this is having. Does Droma have hair? I don't know. Does that make sense? I feel like the eyes need to be very ethereal, so I don't want to add too much shading to them. Just a little bit. Just a little hint. Yeah, maybe something like that, where it's like not quite hair, but like just like dream clouds coming off. So like the top of the head wouldn't really be visible per se. It would kind of just be a very fuzzy impression. Still elongated. Which gives it sort of a interesting look. I feel like this is much too thick in the middle. I think I want to come in quite a bit, make it a bit more inhuman. Yeah, I think definitely a thinner look will be cool for this. That makes sense to me. They wouldn't have a belly button because they weren't born. And then I wonder if this... See if I can select this evenly. Gonna bring that in just a wee bit. Oh, it's a little bit off. There we go. Close enough. we go. Something like that. And then I'm thinking the limbs should be just a smidge longer. It's like if we cut the hands off here. Bring them down, bring them out. We can adjust the scale when we draw over it, but that'll be fine. Something like that. Hands are hard. Just to get an idea. Yeah, some sort of wispy dream stuff. Coming from the head. So it's like all the ideas, all the thoughts sort of spilling out. I almost want it to have this like sort of effect that it doesn't have any like ends to it, just like impressions of endings to its features. It's like just like the hint of the end of the ears, the hint of the end of the head, but not actually truly seeing it. Got our knee in there. And something kind of coming down to a point. And our human reference needs to get much, much smaller. I don't know how to draw feet. Yeah, how big would this human be? Let's take a look at that guy. Yeah, way too big. Because if they were visiting the skull, they'd be... they're big. They're just pixels at that point. I don't know if it's even worth having a... Yeah, there's... there's the human reference. A couple pixels tall, yeah. I don't think it's even worth having the reference in there. They're just too big. Because there's a palace built on the skull, which was then converted into a monastery during the time the campaign takes place. I feel like I could probably stretch the legs even a little bit longer. Oh, not that long. Yeah, that seems more correct. And then the fingertips sort of line up like to the top of the knees, which is, yeah, that's like a hand longer than a regular person. That seems fine. And then what was our color for Droma? Droma was like blue. So Dreams we had as like kind of a lightish blue. I could see it. Let's leave that as a concept and then we can come back to it. What's our next Titan? Nelio is yellow, sort of centered around creation, making something from nothing, so yeah, let me think real quick. So that's sort of like conjuration. I almost feel like I almost feel like Nelio should be almost kind of disconnected from his own body. Like I feel like the arms should be their own thing. And have like multiple arms kind of jutting out. Yeah, so there's not really like a connection between these like parts of him. It could even just be kind of loosely connected by magic. Yeah, I almost feel like it should just be like all arms. And then some sort of like core that makes him up. And like he just kind of creates new limbs out of nothing. And then back back leg arms, front leg arms. Something like that. I don't know if we even need this like bottom piece. I think I'm trying to emulate a humanoid too much. I almost feel like it just needs to be that center. mass. And everything is just sort of connected. And then face. What does his face look like? I like the shape. Could have like one eye in the middle. I don't know. There's not really a reason for that. What do we need for creating? Conjuring out of nothing. Let me look up my my notes. Creation of energy, objects, creatures. Magic can be risky. It draws directly from the plane of magic. Religiously, Nelia represents new beginnings, the beginning of all things. Some worship Nelia as the creator of the universe, who came to walk amongst mortals and pass judgment on his creation. It's the second month of the year, marks the beginning of spring. Here's spring, coming to judge you all. I almost want it to be kind of featureless and like it just sort of creates things as needed. Like there is a core to him, but this is kind of a nice shape. What does an ant mouth look like? That would be an interesting Or like a termite? To have sort of like mandibles instead of a mouth. What does their mouth look like between their mandibles? That's what I want to know. Honestly, it's kind of hard to perceive. This is kind of what I've got going as my reference over here. But I'm not really exactly sure what's going on in there. I almost kind of want like fingers kind of coming out. Yeah, that's terrifying. Because termites build these enormous things. Yeah, maybe it should have a third piece down here, just like a thorax almost. I imagine he would almost kind of be like this and kind of wandering over the earth with his big arms. Have like arms up here just being conjured up. He's just like a big ant. But then he could stand up and do stuff. it'd be really interesting with this Titan because there's a point in time where these Titans are kind of roaming around the Earth, and if this one is a Titan of kind of creation, I wonder if there's like mountains that have been not naturally formed but just built by this guy. Like he's like a terraformer. He like comes into an area and just like, or like a place that was uninhabitable, he'll just like work on it until it becomes a naturally habitable place because of him like tending to it and building it up, which would wreak havoc to everything else around. Like he's a like each Titan is destructive in a different way, and I feel like this is a really interesting way to be disruptive to everything around you. I do want him to have like hands though, because I think that's terrifying. And like the limbs don't really have to be fully formed or even like human per se. I wonder if this would be better. Just like weirdly formed ethereal-ish limbs. Like they're real, but they look weird and they kind of like half form and then go away. Something like that. And like he like tries out different combinations. Like they don't all have to be the same because they're just kind of constantly being created. He has this like rough middle form. Yeah. Like they have different amounts of fingers. They're just like they're here and then they go and then they kind of sprout out again. So maybe there's like one kind of forming here. Like you're not really sure how many arms he has. So there's all these like little wisps of magic kind of coming off of him. With like little hands. Just like touching everything. It's like half formed little baby hands that don't really manifest until they get up there. And maybe there could be even ones up here where they're like not really. Not even a full arm. Just like kind of half-formed hands and fingers. And then his little feetsies down here. Would be kind of the same. Maybe even like modified a bit just to fit his purpose he has for them at that current point in time. Something like that, where it's just sort of forming as it goes. I feel like depictions of this guy would be really, really hard. So they might just resort to some sort of like beetle imagery religiously, which would be really interesting. Yeah, he's just kind of hard to look at. And I like him for that. So there's Neilio. Just conjuring limbs. It's basically designing boss fights. I think we can leave that concept where it is. So we've got dreams, just kind of big person, ethereal waves of dreams pouring out from the head like hair. We got Bug Dude. What's our next one? Aurak. Aurak's important because I have a player that's an immigrant from. Uh, we named it Fortuna, but that's sort of the Titan that centers around there. It's basically fantasy Italy. Because, like, the one thing I have established with this Titan is that the symbol of it is like an open eye. Droma's symbol is kind of is like a closed eye with a line going down. Sort of like a sleeping eye. Whereas Aurak's is an open one. Aurak. Do some kind of head. Do I want... Does Aurak make sense to be more humanoid? He's definitely has to have an eye of some kind. I feel like it should be somewhat similar to the Dream one. I feel like he can't have a mouth. That would sort of defeat the purpose. I almost want this like gemstone quality like behind this huge eyelid. Just like into the void. Lots of like weird little reflections that don't make sense. He doesn't even. I don't. It's not really like a. He needs a chin. I feel like just very smooth, very. I don't know, like a jellyfish almost. He needs to be able to get around though, physically. I don't really have a good idea for him at the moment. Maybe I'll leave it there for now. Maybe we'll come back to Aurak. It's our next one. Validus is like power, energy. I imagine very combat centric sort of following. I don't know. Let's see. It's basically a basically a god of war. What are other gods of war? Not the video game, but the actual mythology. They're all depicted as pretty humanoid. Maybe something more cat-like. Cats are pretty good hunters. Let's try it. Let's see where that gets us. This looks nothing like a cat. What do cats look like? They've got this sort of round eye. We've got our little nose. The little cat mouth. Yeah, I like something with fangs. That would be nice. I almost want like a lion with horns or something. We'll put a question mark. Maybe we'll come back to these. Maybe let's try some color on just one of these and see how it goes. We can always come back to it. Oh, where's my brush? There we go. We'll throw some color on, see what it looks like. Although I should turn my symmetry back on. That'll make things easier. There we go. Welcome to the stream, whoever's watching. We're just kind of going down the list of Titans and thinking about designs. Nothing finalized yet, just kind of spitballing. This is Droma, the Titan of Dreams. First concept. This is the most human of all of them. Just because I built Misery around a humanoid skull, so it does have to have some semblance to it, but the top of the head sort of disappears into what's gonna be like dream clouds kind of spewing out, so like they don't really have an end to their body. And then the magic is kind of associated with this light blue color, so I'm just going to get a base of light blue and kind of see where we go from there. Just to give me something to paint on. I kind of want to do like this, and then I'll go in with the eraser and kind of make it a gradient going out. I think that'll be cool. that. I kind of want each of them to be haunting in their own way. So while this one does look pretty normal, it's just this kind of large large giant with a very serene face. Causing both dreams and nightmares. And kind of imbuing magic into things. Because this magic kind of has to do with your intent and the mind, forcing your mind onto someone else, or your mind into an object, which is sort of how magic items are created. I imagine it being sort of an intent thing, like this is the effect that I want, I'm putting in my energy and my time to make this object. There we go, that'll go faster. And let's get our eraser and just get something. Something like that. And just sort of fade the head out of existence at the top here. Same with the ears. I kind of want the ears to be sort of fading out. I might also just lighten the lines a bit, make it a little more interesting to look at. There we go. Not just black lines. And then, yeah, let's do some painting. What brush do I want? I'm feeling something oily would be. Symmetry pattern not supported with this tool. What do you mean? Fine, I'll do the basic one and then do like a wet blend. What does that look like? Not supported. Maybe this soft round. Just to get some shading in. For kind of 3D-ish renderings, I like to start off with a soft brush just to kind of work in the softer areas, and then we can kind of focus on giving it depth as we go. Something like that. And then we can blend it later. Turn down my flow on this just to get something let's do something lighter. Just to get some highlights in. Oh, I'm using the wrong tool. Get some highlights in here. Kind of figure out what we want to do with this. I do like this sort of like smooth sheen going on. That's kind of fun. Much bigger gradient going there. Nice. Yeah, that definitely looks more toward what I'm kind of going for. Going with some more undershading, give it some contrast. I imagine this sort of like contrast with the eyes would be nice. It's like nice deep blue. And then kind of pale it out maybe. That's some really bright highlights into that. maybe almost like transparent. I wonder if you would be able to see the skeleton slightly underneath it. That would be kind of creepy and cool. Let's add a new layer and see if we can do that. Cause it would be like this duller kind of something with something like that. And then you've got all the little hand bones. In there somewhere. That's kind of cool. Let's get our eraser back and kind of blend these around. So the trick to making this work is just gonna be the blending of everything. Oh, what happened? I lost it. There we go. That's really creepy and cool. I enjoy that a lot. I bet we could find a cool blending mode for this. Hard light. Hard light's pretty cool. Linear light is also very fun. I like the... Yeah, let's try linear light maybe. Or just try multiplying, like bringing it down a bit. I'm also gonna try... Oh. I'm gonna try duplicating the skin layer and putting it on top and bringing it to like a... Whoa, creepy. Like an overlay, if that makes a difference. we can add some like speckly bits to it. Like a splatter brush of some kind. Ooh, yeah. Just to make it a little more like ethereal. Because this is like the conception of everything, like the ideas. That's pretty cool. I like that. And I'm gonna do a little trick that I've done before on stuff like this. First I'm gonna try some different blending modes just to see what I like. Ooh, adding in darker speckles in there might be fun too. I'll put it on an overlay. I'm gonna make a copy of this just to duplicate it, and then on that bottom copy I'm actually gonna go into my blur. Does this give me control? No, that doesn't give me any control. Sure, Gaussian blur. But I'm just blurring the back copy of it just to see what that'll do. To the overall look. Yeah, it gives it that sort of that subtle glow effect. That's really cool. I do like the idea of adding darker speckles in there, so let's make another layer. Let me label these light specks, and then the light speck blurred. Top overlay. This is our skeleton layer. That's our shading. That's our base. Dark specks. Yeah, let's get some like really dark blue specks. Those can be a little smaller, I feel like. Yeah, this is looking really interesting. I was not expecting to go in this direction, but I like it. Ooh, I kind of want to add, I'll do the speckles up here almost like freckles on the face. And I'll probably tone down how dark these are in just a bit. But just to add some interesting depth to everything, I think that'll be nice. Yeah, I think I'll turn the opacity on those down. Maybe not as far down as that, but I will duplicate it. And then we'll blur the bottom one. Filter. Yeah, so there's basically no blur, and then doing like a 2-point blur. 8's too far. And then we could even turn this one down a little more. And turn the speckles blur down a little more. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I like that. What are we gonna do for the hair? I think I have a cloud brush somewhere. Is it this fluffy brush? It's kind of cloud-ish. Oh, there it is. Literally cloud brush. I think that might be the same one, actually. It's a little different. Sure. We'll try that. Something like that, and then we can add some glow to it. I'm just getting a little bit lighter, a little bit bluer with each pass that I'm going over this. probably just use my eraser tool with the soft end to kind of blend it around. Just to soften the edges and blur it a little bit. Yeah, what happens if we duplicate this and then make that like an overlay? I feel like I just need to blur that overlay as well. We'll try it. Something like that. Kind of a subtle effect, but it works decently for what I'm looking for. And then I need sort of a back hair layer. And we'll just make it big. Then we'll get a little lighter, a little bluer. And then a little smaller with the brush. A little lighter, a little bluer. A little lighter, a little bluer. A little smaller. Start to build up some of those individual little strands. Go in with our eraser tool, just kind of soften everything up. Give it edges that are a bit more undefined. I think that'll be better for the overall concept. a little bit. And then, yeah, we'll just do kind of the same thing we did with the top. I'll duplicate it. Put it on top, give it an overlay. Bring it down. And then we'll just blur that until it looks like that. Yeah, I'm liking that. That's gonna be super cool. Let's go back into the base sketch. I kind of want to clean up some of these lines, because I don't really need that guy. I don't really need any of these hairlines present up there. Do we want to drop any? We could keep the opacity up on the line work. Maybe not 100%. I like having it slightly transparent. But yeah, just all these little guidelines that I had in there, I think we can get rid of. And that'll be nice. I like how that looks. Let's get all of that into one folder. Turn my symmetry line off just so I can look at it. I'm curious what a darker background would look like. Like an almost black. Just gonna try some stuff out. And then let's go into the hair and add kind of a speckly layer to it. I'll go find my speckle brush again, because I like the way that looked. Sort of like stars. And same with the bottom hair. Just add a... And I'm not going to use the symmetry tool for this. I'm just going to kind of plant things in there throughout, and then we'll lower the opacity at the end. Yeah, just a really subtle speckle on top of it. Sweet. There's our Dream Titan. And I think I'm going to leave it there for now. We'll come back to this and draw more Titans, but I wanted to at least get Droma out of the way. Something creepy, but kind of beautiful, kind of terrifying. I am terrified that my human scale reference didn't work out because the pixel count is just too low. So yeah, just imagine this enormous. But thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.